Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DXC Technology Tech Talk. Really excited today. I think we've got a great agenda item today, which is why is digital not enough for the modern enterprise? And I think this is a really big topic for us. We're beginning to recognize, right, that a lot of companies are beginning to use the digital platform strategy. I think that we've widely recognized that bimodal companies are broken at their core because they don't respect some of the key traits of the organization that need to be rebuilt in order to really create this modern enterprise. And further, I think that again, there are more facets that a company needs to change in order to really reset its execution against the expectations of the modern client-based market. And so with that, I'm going to jump into the tech talk. I have Richard Davies here with me today. He's Vice President and Managing Director of DXC's Leading Edge Forum, which is really our think tank who's out embracing in a very open way the marketplace and meeting with a number of chief executives who are helping to form a picture of what's really going on in this marketplace and how can DXC and our partners and our clients work together to close these gaps. So welcome, Rich.
Thanks, Dan. Good to be here.
So as we go through the tech talk, I just want to kind of go through some of the initial pieces. We're going to start with a quick live discussion between Rich and I around what we're seeing in the of how our company's going digital. And then we're going to follow this with a crowd chat. It's worldwideweb.crowdchat.net/DXC Tech Talk. This is an open forum, a fully public forum enabled through Twitter and LinkedIn, and creates a real a time series collaboration or a topical collaboration, which is allows us to really have conversations across broad audiences with a lot of reach to try to bring others into those conversations. So I'm going to just kind of recognize that anybody can ask a question, anybody can provide a comment, and we're really looking for people to kind of build on key ideas or ask questions that many others are asking that we can try to as a technology community and leading edge forum community, really begin to hone some answers to within the market. And then just, a safety or fair harbor statement is to recognize, these are fully public sessions. And so don't say things that you would regret later. And certainly don't mention key customers by name if you can help it, or unless you have their permission. And so with that, we're really going to start to move into some of the core content. And, we're hearing from a lot of customers, right, that they are concerned about digital, and they're trying to figure out, right, what does digital mean for them. Right, there is a digital imperative that's coming down from the boardroom. Lots of times that's coming in the view that I see from this perception that we need to compete with our more digital brethren. Right, we see the brick and mortars giving way to e-commerce at a pace that's absolutely incredible. We see all becoming disruptive, and what we recognize is that the center and the cornerstone of this continues to be coming back to IT. And I really mean IT, which is not your traditional run and maintain of enterprise systems. I mean information technology, putting information to work for your business. The technology itself still is changing very rapidly, but we are seeing some very large shifts in the landscape around a couple of key topics we're going to talk about in a minute. But we also see the culture and process, the front and back office information technologies are still creating inertia. And one of the key questions that clients constantly have is, how do you get me on a journey where I can take the best of what I had before and make it better using these new technologies and enable my business to move as a more integrated basis into this digital world? And so, we're really seeing that this changes everything. Next slide, Heather. Entering into the marketplace is really one of the firstborn digital companies. We've now functionally aligned our business around what I'll call 6 of these key journeys. And there are things that we hear from our clients, right? They're looking for the pathway to operate their business in a cloud as a cloud. And what that's really defined as is that there's an expectation of the business of a real-time access to resources and a ability to control those resources themselves, so an empowerment of the employee or the business unit or group, But also there's the recognition of the agility that having a virtually infinite capital infrastructure and infinite networking and infinite storage begins to lend to the business, as well as an elasticity that allows them to better match the costs of the business to the revenue that's produced. There are the new application styles that are decorated by information that begin to create these very engaging client experiences. And certainly not all either internal or external applications are formed to bring information to the front of the discussion. And there's the employee experience, which I think is one of the huge gaps. I mean, one of the best ways to reset the expectation is to change the culture of collaboration. We certainly see that collaboration needs to move from what I'll really call a very slow, non-agile environment, which is largely a broadcast mode like email, right, to these real-time collaboration spaces, whether we talk about modern tools like Slack or Microsoft Teams or any of the others, even Facebook at work, to really reshape everything from the way that teams operate at the bottom of the business, at the middle of the business, or is actually using these agile collaborative commons for running the top level of the enterprise and the executive engagement, and what kind of pressure is that putting on new executives. We hear frequently this notion of operating information-driven digital business. We know that there are some new risks coming into this business in elements like GDPR and high fine rates and the loss of IP. And so companies need to very carefully begin to get control over information. They need to understand their information inventory, and they need to move forward aggressively to actually take advantage of that inventory by putting the right kinds of access controls and use management, but also the democratization of information access on top of it. We also know that enterprise risk is shifting. It's no longer this notion of I am risk-free. Instead, it's a conversation about what could the enterprise do to best reduce its risk. And certainly there are a variety of categories that all contribute to an overall risk score. And we're looking at new ways of talking to the enterprise about the different risks that exist. And then, one of the biggest pieces that I think a lot of people forget is that really to act as a digital enterprise, you really have to think about how processes can flow end to end without user intervention. And whether we want to talk about robotic process automation or dynamic route process engineering, or straight-through processing, we begin to recognize is that there are many processes where people are the interpreters of information and the forwarders and routers in the organization. And that actually forces a delay in being able to complete business in a very timely fashion, and therefore becomes a dissatisfier to both employees and customers alike. And these key facets, if you look at them as kind of 6 key journeys that a digital enterprise needs to go on, all interrelate with one another in the same way that I think Rich is going to talk about 6 key facets at the top of the business that need to come together in order to create a truly 21st century enterprise. And so with that, Rich is going to talk to us a little bit about what he's hearing from his client base. Leading executives at leading global firms who are both LEF subscribers, people who actually contribute to and consume the research and collaborate around it, recognizing that many other people have very, very similar problems, and there may very well be some lessons learned that they could benefit from. And the LEF provides us that collaboration point with the executives in top companies that help us to really shape a viewpoint of how do we best address these problems of creating these digital platforms, digital advisory services, and other elements to help more customers take a journey that is much more proven and lower risk. And so with Rich, you want to take it away and explain what the LEF does and what we're seeing?
Yeah, thanks so much, Dan. Well, good morning, afternoon, evening to everyone on the call, wherever you may be. So just going to spend the next 10 minutes kind of giving you an insight through the lens of what we're seeing with chief digital officers, chief operating officers, and many people who are now being given the mantle of leading the digital initiatives, if you like, within large corporations. And my starting point is this slide, which, if you can't see it, is basically a very large elephant that's been sliced up into many, many pieces. And I'm really, referencing here the story of the blind man and the elephant. And that's what we are seeing and hearing customers say. They are inundated with everyone from everywhere, all of whom have a piece of that elephant and are claiming that it's nirvana. It is the answer. And you can see on this slide, whether it's blockchain, digital transformation, machine intelligence, big data, these buzzwords are prevalent. And yet, for a lot of customers, it's still very unclear what all this has to do or how all this comes together to actually change something meaningful for the organization and get common agreement across leadership within these companies that this is the case. And obviously a lot of this is being driven by the fact that we are seeing the emergence of digerati, the well-known ones, the Amazons, the Googles, the Ubers, who seem to very easily and seamlessly move into other people's markets and use technology to be the prime driver of disintermediating and disrupting other people's businesses. So the answer is, well, why can't we do it ourselves? And that really begs the question, are any of our clients, and when I talk about our clients in a DXC sense, I'm really talking about large established organizations, are they really put together to be able to deliver these products and services in a repeatable, scalable way that go right to the heart of what they're about? And the answer is, from what we're seeing in our research, is that most organizations are not. And they have, in a way, sleptwalked into the 21st century with 20th century business models. And Heather, on the next slide, they have the same organizational structures that they've always had, the same business models, leadership styles haven't really changed in great deal. And they've actually all got very similar underpinning infrastructures. And therefore, it makes it, in our words, quite difficult to deliver something to the customer or the citizen that's going to be different, that's going to be more intimate, and more importantly, that is going to fit the requirements of how customers actually want to interact with you. And so on the next slide, I'm going to just put up, and it might not be visible to everybody, but we'll share the links later. But this is a slide that really talks about the 6 capabilities that we believe are going to be necessary to deliver competing products and services against the digerati, and also the ones that will enable people to actually satisfy what their customers want to hear. So if I very quickly loop around this circle, what we're really talking about here is the customer is the center. It's not a product, it's not a service anymore, it's the customer. And these 6 capabilities, or each capability, is very, very large in nature, it's very rich, and it's very deep. But each capability is interlinked. And this is why we say digital is not enough, is that you cannot solve this issue by just saying, I will give you some digital stuff that will transform what you do. You have to change all these areas using these capabilities. So if I go around the wheel, the first area is what we call about sense making. We call it proactive haptic sensing, but in many ways, it really means that most companies have invested in R&D, but in very weak and disconnected ways. So supply chain might have an R&D function, technology has an R&D function, marketing will have an R&D, but then most large companies, they're not joined up. And it's a real issue, because if they're not joined up, it's very difficult to actually create new innovative things that will actually stick within an organization. And typically what you tend to see around innovation in most large companies is it's very difficult to scale. And most companies create great new things, but they tend to be on the periphery, and they very, in many cases, when they try to scale, they get rejected by the body. And,
or there's a lack of focus, right? Where all of a sudden you're actually confusing your clients, or confusing everyone. You have redundancy, right? I mean, what we just saw at Philips in the HBR article, right, was very interesting, right? They recognized they had a ton of innovation, but they weren't materializing the value from it because it wasn't as focused as it needed to be.
Correct. Absolutely right, Dan. And sensing isn't just about looking out in the market and seeing how the shifts are changing, but it's about actually putting these technologies and these innovations into the hands of other executives, so you truly understand what it is to be digital. Digital is not a thing, it's a way of being. And a lot more executives need to understand this. And we're spending a lot of time with executives at the moment trying to get this point over. I don't know if Lewis Richards is on the call. Many of you on this call may know Lewis, but he's leading an area of our work, which is really around, executive upgrades. If you're purporting to be a digital company and yet you do a profile of a lot of executives, you'll find they're not very digital at all. And that needs to change, because it's really important that the words match the deeds. And so there is a big element of work that we're seeing going on in most of clients now around upgrading the sensing capabilities across siloed organizations, and also ensuring that the relevant leaders understand truly what it means to be digital. And I'm very happy to talk with people offline, but one of the companies that we're doing this with extensively at the moment is GE, which is on an absolute mission to move 330,000 people to become digital. And these are 330,000 people from traditional industry product backgrounds, a very big shift culturally. So the sensing piece is the first capability. The second capability is really about strategy. And in many cases, a 20th century organization sees strategy mostly as a plan. It doesn't actually see it as an identity. And what we're saying here is that many organizations have to now think about how are they seen by the external world? What's their identity? Are they serving customers and partners and potential talent in the right way? Are they the sort of company that those people want to join? So, strategy as an identity rather than a plan is a very big issue. The sort of third area, which is the red section on this slide, is really taking what we would call an outside-in mindset to assets and capabilities. I include technology in this, as I include talent. So most organizations are on the journey to move from fixed assets to non-fixed assets, cloud, everything that I'll come on to another slide that we refer to as the matrix, which is this great rich set of capabilities that is building up in the external world, driven by platforms, driven by higher order of things that are now freely available to create new forms of business on. You don't actually have to own the asset at all. And I think, probably a great example is if you look at Walmart and Amazon at the moment, I think Amazon's market cap outstrips Walmart by a considerable amount. And yet I believe that the fixed asset costs of achieving that are 1/10 or something ridiculous. So the most organizations still have not embedded an outside-in approach to assets and capabilities. And this is a big deal for us at DXC, which is how do you accelerate that move to non-fixed assets and capabilities and leverage that rich set of cloud, big data, analytics out there. But just as importantly, how do you manage talent in a very different way? And one of my colleagues, Dave Aaron, who put this slide together, he one of his taglines is HR is dead. And the reason for that is it's become much more about resources and not about the human piece. And if you want the bright, the people with the new skills to join and stay in the organization, you have to provide the right environment for them to thrive. So talent management we are seeing as it's a huge capability that most large firms are trying to invest in now or create. The fourth spot that we're looking at is really starting to reinvent the way in which products and services are based on the evolution of digital. So in many cases in the old world, it was very much standalone. It was e-commerce. It was siloed. Now you're looking at the end-to-end. What we would call the 360 portfolio, the way that these organizations change that whole business model, that whole route to market. And there's a number of companies that are great success stories in this space, how they've moved from being a product company to using information. SKB, the large Scandinavian company in manufacturing, has gone from product to information as their core asset. You're seeing most companies starting to look at platform plays as a way of achieving this. So, a lot of movement in here. I think that the fifth area that we're seeing is that most organizations, in terms of the way that they produce things, are still siloed, and that silos, that's pretty much as we would say, is engineered for stasis. And yet, in many cases, these structures and metrics get in the way of collaboration. They get in the way of information being shared. Some of the biggest dangers of not landing the whole MI is having the correct type of data in the correct form across the company that you can actually then run questions and then run business models against. So there has to be a real change in the way that all of this is put together. And then lastly, sorry,
I mean, I just want to reinforce that one. One of the big gaps, right, is one of the symptoms that you begin to see is in defensive cultures, right? Information becomes power. So, if I have the information that you need to be successful, I can actually, wield that information as a weapon. So, sometimes to Rich's point, right, the incentive programs and the hierarchies, right, and a culture of moving on defense versus offense, which is, if together we can grow faster rather than this notion of my business grows faster than yours. Or my business shrinks faster than yours, shrinks slower than yours, right? Become these critical assets, and it is critical that you actually line up and have to take a look at the new incentive programs within the company, the new structures, as well as the leadership styles that are necessary in order to create that agility. Because we are looking at agility in every facet of the business, and if you kind of had to underpin digital for me, one of the things you begin to see is this notion of he who's most agile might win. So I don't know.
Well, these fixed silos, the way they've been, it's easy, creates easy to measure it, but it's not necessarily enabling the organization to become agile. So, the approaches that people have to take to this have to be varied. It's not one size fits all anymore. And that's the real point. I was talking to someone the other day, they still will use waterfall because the issue that they're trying to deal with is just so big, it cannot be chunked up into manageable bite-sized pieces in their opinion. But the real key to that capability at the end of the day is that, collaboration, experimentation, value creation, whatever you're trying to achieve there can only be done if you break down those silos in the way that you've actually executed in the past. And then the last piece is leadership. Leadership is really what holds this all together. We refer to hippo leadership in most companies. A lot of companies still practice hippo leadership, which roughly put means the highest paid person's opinion, rather than, as you see in a lot of the digerati, they run their businesses very much on data-driven decisions, and hence I'll probably eliminate a lot of bias in the system that most organizations do suffer from. And ultimately all of these capabilities are strung together to serve the customer. So that bringing those capabilities together, changing the organization to enable this, is really what creates the context and the environment to deliver what a lot of people term digital or transformation. You cannot do and achieve that in a lasting sense and a meaningful sense in our view, unless you address, and have these 6 capabilities embedded in your organization. And a lot of companies are doing bits of this. I'm not saying, this is a journey that I put up here, but a lot of organizations are doing bits of it well. There's very few traditional companies that we're seeing who have all 6 joined up. So, for us, this has to be an aspiration. We're getting a lot of buy-in from executives around this model because they also know that these silos have to break down. People have to work across boundaries. Technology is increasingly becoming one of the key drivers of this, and none more so than, if we go to the next slide, something that we call the matrix, we believe, is fundamentally driving this. And so this is a chart, as you can see, which very much looks at the evolution of what we call platforms. Started with infrastructure as service, went up to physical infrastructure, up to platforms. Then it got into the whole, social and crowdsourcing, crowd mobility kind of areas. Then we looked at the innovators. Machine intelligence is the next generation. And principally, this fabric that we're seeing evolve around us in the public space is really being driven by the scale of cloud economics added to the increasing exponential explosion in machine intelligence. And you combine those two together and you create effectively a matrix, as we put up here, that makes it very easy for organizations, especially those without legacy. And I don't take legacy lightly. It is a real problem for most organizations who want to move faster than they actually can. But for new entrants to come in and disrupt, it's very simply a case of starting to use these as building blocks to create very low asset intensive but highly scalable and effective information-based businesses. And that really, for us, is the key accelerator, if you like, in all of this. And it's what's really starting to create the confusion and so on and so forth within a lot of large traditional organizations who want to change but are not quite sure, where they should change and how quickly they should go, and what are all the capabilities that I described on the last slide underpinning that. And so, from our perspective, Dan, just in the sort of 10 minutes I've spoken, these are kind of the fundamental drivers, issues, capabilities that we're seeing out there that are really all adding up to creating what we would term a 21st century organization, creating a 21st century human in the sense of having the skills to thrive in a digital world, and the matrix, which for us is really, from a technology standpoint, is the accelerator. And when people talk about scale and risk, and I think that's just accepted day-to-day practice now. And there are a lot of people out there, many of whom are DXC's key partners, who are providing that scale and providing those tools. And the challenge for us as a company is how we play in this. What's the role of DXC in enabling this change? Because for some customers, I think they question the role of the integrator in all of this. So it's important, I think, that we loop that back to the sales plays that you started at the start of this talk, which is operating your business in the cloud, enabling secure, productive employees, continually optimizing processes. We need to put ourselves in that situation as it relates to these organizational capabilities that we're seeing most of our customers striving to put in place. So
I wish that more companies could see the Wordly maps and use the Wordly maps, because DXC's primary motivation behind driving these journeys is that one thing that we do here resoundingly is that IT cannot scale. So enterprise IT cannot scale.
Yeah.
And that's a really big statement. So what they're looking for is a scale play with respect to their platforms.
Mm-hmm.
They're being able to benefit from the investments of others, so that the return on their dollar of investment is much higher than $1 that I might get through IT.
Yeah.
And system integrators who are born in this new digital world, who are hyper partnered with companies who are putting a huge amount of R&D in, who have a huge amount of scale behind them. And I might talk about, the network providers like AT&T, the cloud providers like Amazon and Microsoft, the employee technology providers like, Microsoft and Citrix, the core back office process providers like ServiceNow and Dynamics and SAP. Right? These strategic partners are putting a huge amount of money into R&D, and what our clients have to begin to understand is that if they can move into a configure not customized, they will unlock an evergreen value for themselves. But that again takes a cultural change, a contracting change, and we need to help them to refactor their legacy business in a way in which they create an affordability window for it. So I'm not suggesting that ITO is ITO as a pure financial model of the past is gone, but I think that the model that we are seeing is, how do we help you to re-operationalize your business by taking over the old and then driving it into a new, much more stable and sustainable, innovative platform that has the backing of broad-based industries. And I think that becomes the role of the new integrator, is to actually take them on that reintegration journey for their business. So with that, I'm going to close out. I'd love to have you have that last set of words on top of mine, but we're going to go over to CrowdChat because we have a lot of people. I'd like to invite everyone, come over to worldwideweb.crowdchat.net/DXC Tech Talk. It's going to be a very active community. Typically, we get a fairly broad reach. We've had up to 800,000 people in our reach before, and I'd love to double that this time around because I think a lot of people need to hear our point of view. I think we can help to simplify it. I think we can help them to understand the patterns where successful companies are operating, and hopefully also some of our insights help them from to move forward faster in the marketplace. So please join me over there. We are going to do our next Tech Talk, and we're going to really focus in on one of those key journeys. And that journey that we're going to focus in on June 19th, right, is going to be operate your business in a cloud as a cloud, which is that focus of how do I move myself from what I'll call kind of a captive capital environment, which is traditional IT, into an agile pay-as-you-go environment, which is cloud, and how do the workloads need to shift, and how do you get there successfully, and how do you deal with risk? And we're going to do that with Eugene O'Callaghan and Jim Miller. So please mark your calendars for June 19th. And now let's head over to Crowd Chat.